Hello and good afternoon, and welcome to the second in our series of PBS Town Halls. By way of introduction, my name is Jeff Peterson, and I am APFA National Contract Chair. And here to my right,
I'm Marty McMillan. I'm the National Scheduling Chair.
And over here to the left,
I'm Linda Hotling, APFA Scheduling West.
My name is Renee Mayer. I'm the JCBA Specialist.
Hi everyone, I'm Josh Black. I'm APFA National Secretary. We are so glad to have you on today. Before we get started, we did today launch the November-December negotiation survey. It is live on the APFA website now. I'm going to share my screen real quick so you can see how to get to it. You'll log into the APFA website at apfa.org. On the home screen, when you log in, when you open the web page, you'll see negotiation survey. If you click this link, it'll prompt you to log in. Once you log in, there's some general information. You can click begin survey, and we have a series of questions for you. This information will be very helpful in guiding the negotiators on some of your priorities for negotiations. The survey is open until December 10th at 5 p.m., and we encourage you to take the survey. Back to you.
Thank you, Josh. We were thrilled to have so many of you join us in October for our first PBS Town Hall, and we hope the information that we shared was helpful. Our goal today is to review and expand on some of the things we talked about last month. PBS bidding for December opened about an hour ago, and holiday months are always some of the trickiest months to bid for. And we certainly want everyone to be successful and satisfied with their PBS award. In November, we welcomed roughly 2,000 flight attendants back from EVLOA, and another 900 or so are returning in December. Those who have been on leave may not have bid in PBS in as much as 20 months. We have also experienced wild fluctuations in reserve seniorities over the last couple of years. It's no secret that more people are on reserve in December than we would like to see. At many bases, that means that very senior people are serving reserve. So one of the first things that we're going to talk about today is reserve bidding. On that note, yesterday, APFA National Leadership went over to the training center to meet the new hires in Class 2101. They will be graduating next week. The new hires will be subject to straight reserve for their first year of flying, so that will bring some much needed relief to the reserve numbers at the bases they are reporting to. They are certainly very excited to be here, and I know that we're all very happy to have them here and help get us off of reserve. In addition to bidding for reserve days off, we will also go over specific versus generic bidding for line holders, bidding your target credit range or your TCR, bidding for vacation premiums, and of course, holiday bidding. We appreciate all of the questions that have been submitted so far. We will try to answer as many of those as we can as we go through the presentation today. Just know that we won't be able to talk about everything, and we may not be able to answer every single question. This town hall is being recorded and will be available later today on apfa.org and on YouTube. This will give you the opportunity to go back and watch any parts you would like to review, or if you weren't able to stay for the entire presentation, to come back to it at a later time. And of course, any of your friends that were not able to be here today, if you let them know that they can watch the whole thing at a later date. We will also upload the PowerPoint presentation to the APFA website. The presentation today will include a lot of information. You probably won't be able to read it all word for word as we present it. That is why we will also upload it to the website so you can go over the information at your own pace. So let's get started. Marty?
Thanks, Jeff. And also happy Veterans Day to anyone who serves. We're so glad that you gave the sacrifice to our country and your time. All right, we'll get started here. We just wanted to talk briefly about the holiday peak day and perfect attendance payments. Just as a reminder, the holiday peak days for November are November 23rd through the 29th. For December, they're December 22nd through January 2nd. And then if you want to get the 300% for the perfect attendance, you have to be available to the company November 15th through January 2nd. And that would qualify you for the 300% for any of the trips flown during the peak days. So first thing we wanted to talk about is where can you find help when you go to bid on PBS? And we've given you several resources that you can utilize to find some help. The first one would be on JetNet on the flight service page. And then you can go in the center to crew change, and then once you're in crew change, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but it's under PBS. And we put a screenshot up of exactly where on the flight service page you'll find the crew change link. Also on apfa.org, we have under the departments tab and then click scheduling. There's also some PBS information that will help you, a lot of resources there. And then you can also go for specific questions, go on the flight attendant portal and then log in and then click the support tab and then follow the links to PBS bidding help, and it gives you some space to type in your specific question. So once you go on crew change on the flight service page and you click on that crew change link, this is what you're going to see when you log in onto that page. And you'll see that there's a whole menu on PBS guides. There's a full PBS guide, there's a quick guide, and then there's also some training bidding and other guides as well. And if you don't like reading, there's also a lot of great videos that you can click, and I've highlighted those over to under that great big PBS flag. You'll find the PBS training videos, and you can click on any of those and they'll walk you through. So some other stuff that you'll find on crew change that's really helpful, I think probably the most helpful is the charts and timeline link. And if you click on that one, you'll get basically a whole calendar that shows you when you're bidding for training, when you bid for vacation rebids, all of those things. When does PTS open? This gives you a great timeline for every date that you need to know about. And it's a good one to save on your phone just in case you're on vacation somewhere and you can't really remember what days you need to check in and put your PBS bid in, or you need to check the LRD. This is a great one to have. This is another calendar version of that same timeline. Some people like to look at things on a calendar this way. I personally found it confusing, so over to the right, I wrote out the line holder reserve, the LRD dates, and then underneath I wrote the PBS dates, so it's kind of summed up for you as well there. Also on APFA, once you click on and sign in on the APFA webpage, you can click on departments and then follow those links. If you need a password reset, we've put the phone number that you would need to call, or you can email Erica and she'll be happy to reset your password for you. And it's a very quick process, so if you do need to do that, you can do it there. But once you click on the scheduling tab, you'll see PBS over to the right, and you can see all of the links that we have to different resources for PBS bidding. And a lot of those will take you right to the questions that you're looking for. Okay, so we wanted to talk about the PBS Dashboard. Once you click on in Crew Portal, if you click on the monthly bidding tab and then you click on PBS, this is what you should see. The bidding tabs are all across the top, and it will show you the targeted number of reserves and line holders in your base for that month and the total number of bidders. It will give you your seniority, and you can see this was my seniority last month, or no, in October. Then you will also see your status right here. You'll either be line holder or reserve. And you can see, you know, if you say we're on a leave, medical leave of some sort, or if you're doing some kind of company business, union business, it might say pay purposes only. And that will also list any existing credit that you might have for the month. So if you have some vacation time or something like that, you may have some existing credit already in your PBS dashboard. So one of the biggest questions and the most common questions that we get on the contract scheduling desk is, I just saw that bids are out and I don't have an award. And it's the silliest thing, but we all forget. So don't ever feel silly that you've forgotten, but you have to click the award tab to actually see your award. Especially if you've been gone for a while, you may have forgotten that that's where that is. So once bids are out, make sure you go on the PBS tab in Crew Portal and then click your award, and then it will show you what your award is. You'll also see where you got your award from, and it'll show you what layer it came from, days off, how much credit it is, and any premium paid that you might have gotten. So if you've had a miss award, this is something that's changed for those of you who may have been gone for the last year or so. Things have changed. Of course, we don't have fabric anymore. So that's changed the process of what you do if you think you have a miss award. So now what you do, if you think you have a miss award, is back at the portal, you'll see the link over to the right, and then you'll see a support tab link. So you'll click on that, and it will take you to a different, click on that support tab. We have thing, there it is. So if you click on the support tab, you make your selection for what system, and you're going to choose PBS. And then down in the little remarks or the summary section, you just type in why you think you might have a miss award. And they will respond to you via the same tab. So under the active forms tab there, you will see their response. And they have been fairly quick with responding during the PBS miss award period. Okay. And then if you disagree with what they've responded with your potential miss award, if you are still in disagreement with them, then you can contact APFA, and by clicking on the main page for apfa.org, there's several forms across the middle of the page, and one of those is the PBS miss award form. And you can click that, and that will come to actually the four of us, plus another couple of folks that review those PBS miss awards. And we can see what the team, the PBS admin team, has responded to you, and then we can follow up with you to say, yes, we agree with them, or no, we don't, or what we need to do from that point. But it helps us if you disagree, and let us know about those as well. Now I'll turn it over to Linda, who's going to explain more. Thank you.
Hi. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is bidding reserve and PBS, because that's one of the most common questions we have. Go to the next page. Good? Fabulous. I learn something new every day. Okay, so bidding, reserve, and PBS. This slide basically just kind of gives you the outline of how PBS bills, you know, days off, days on. You don't have to read through it all now, because remember Jeff explained this will be uploaded to the website, so you can go look through these rules in peace and quiet. All right, bidding for reserve for your days off. When you go into PBS, please check on the top. There is a tab that says days off. If you're on reserve, do not use that tab. You see the big red X through it? Those are for days off for line holders. You do not want to use this. You want to go click instead on the reserve tab. Once you've done that, you will also see the reserve days off calendar. It shows you how many reserves are required on each given day. Remember, so legal patterns and legalities of other flight attendants might prevent you from holding a day off. So, for example, on this particular calendar, if you bid off on the 4th and it happened to be the 4th of July, there might be people that have carryover sequences, or that already had 4 days of flying at the end of the previous month. So the maximum number of days they could fly in the beginning of the new month is 3 days, and they have to have the day off. Not because you didn't get it, but just because they're not legal to be on reserve for that day. Now, to make it easy, let's go to a PBS calendar, and I'll show you a quick how to bid PBS. Josh will change the screen for us. Give us a moment. Would you go to my login, please? Thank you. Oh, I can go do that too? All right. Oh, I learned something new. All right. The first thing, as I said, let's go to a reserve. When you are in this, the easiest way to click on that, say I want off Saturday the 11th. You click on the 11th, and then you see bid, add bid. Now, up here, do you see where it says layer 1? So that's layer 1. You can also see that you are in layer 1, and that's where you're bidding right now, by the highlights across. Now, remember, I just told PBS this is my most important day off. Let's say, December 25th, Christmas, if that would be my most important day off, I would add that. Now, when you add days off in the same layer, you're telling PBS they are equal. If PBS goes in and it can only give me off either the 11th or the 25th, I just told it it's PBS's choice. Now, if I do not want that, and my most important thing is to have off the 25th, you can go in, click on the 11th again, click delete bid, and now the only day off in your layer 1 is the 25th. So this is how you would add single days. The other thing you can make use of, let's say you need off every Friday for your purposes. You can actually click on the header, and it's not working for me. Oh, there we go. I clicked on the header of Friday, I clicked add bid, and it automatically highlights every Friday as a day off. If you want to delete this, same thing, you click the header again, click and delete, and it will take it out. Now, obviously you have 7 layers. You want to make use of those 7 layers when you are a reserve. So layer 1, the most important day off was the 25th. Going to layer 2, you can do it 2 ways. You either click down the caret, click on layer 2. You see how it changed up here? You can do it that way, or you can just click on the layers up here, and it will move you as well. So let's add another day off to layer 2. Let's say I want off the 31st. Click on the 31st, click add bid. Now, I got layer 1 and layer 2. Remember, you have 12 days off that you can bid. So let's go to layer 3. When you bid days off, make sure, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to click on that. Make sure that you do count the days on and off. So remember, I requested to bid off on the 25th and the 31st. That gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days for potential reserve in between. However, when I bid a day off, I cannot bid a single day off. It will have to be 2. So remember, I bid the 31st. I will have to be off the 30th as well. You can't be off a single day. So now I have 4 days of reserve here. If I were to bid off as well the 26th and the 27th, as an example, say it's over the weekend, now the system sees, well, if I award the 25th from the first layer, the 31st from the second layer, and these 3 days, I would only have 2 days of reserve available. The system is not going to let you do that. In this particular case, go ahead and delete your bid for the 27th so that it can give you the award possible. Because if you, I hate to say that, but if you put PBS in a corner, it's going to make a decision, and it might not always be the one that you like. So, give it something it can work with, okay? Once again, let me go to the next slide. We had talked about this. All right, so the most important thing to remember, to start out with those days that are most important to you. You request all 12 days off in the first layer. You're telling PBS all equal to you, and it will give you what it wants to give you. So stagger your request and make use of counting out the days, and use the calendar to count up the days in between for your patterns, so that you do not request for an infeasible pattern. And I'm handing the rest of more reserve information over to Renee.
We're going to talk a little bit more about flex days and golden days. One of the things we are asked all the time is about how do I bid for a Flex Day Golden Day? And of course, you do that in the app. PBS does not award Flex Days or Golden Days, but it does take that into consideration as it's building its legal patterns. So on the screen, it shows you where legal Flex Days can be placed. So, and if you have 4 blocks of reserve days off, of course, a Flex Day has got to follow a group of reserve days. So you have to have placement for 4 legal Flex Days in your bid. So keep that in mind when you're bidding your days off. Coverage needed days for reserves, especially with our holiday months coming up, we will see coverage needed dates. These are days where the company needs coverage, but not enough flight attendants are bidding to be on those days. So when one or more days is at your seniority, your line is going to be constructed to cover the most coverage needed dates as possible. And once you get your award, if you look at it, you will see across the top the coverage needed days that were applied to your seniority. With the holiday months, there's oftentimes many coverage needed dates, and I'm going to go through a couple of examples for you. That's strange.
Yeah, no, that popped in.
So as Linda was saying, especially if you really want the holiday off, then you need to bid that day off, and that day only in a layer. Because anytime you mix days off in a layer, oh, sorry, I should have this off. I hope you can hear me okay. So whenever you mix days off in the layer, PBS is going to look, and it's going to try to award you your days, but it may only be able to award one of them, and PBS will choose the one that it's going to award. With the holidays, if PBS determines that a given day is a holiday, once a reserve is scheduled to that holiday as a coverage needed day, every reserve junior to that flight attendant will also be on reserve on that day. I've put together a couple of examples here for you showing just how coverage needed days over the holidays work. In this example, a flight attendant, she bid in layer 1, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26. She really wants to go see her family on those days, and so those are her important days. Unfortunately, the 24th, 25th, and 26th are CN days. So PBS is not going to award her those as scheduled days off. However, the 22nd and 23rd, they're not coverage needed days, so if they fit into a legal pattern, then she will be scheduled off on those days. All the legal patterns are determined from the awarded days off. Illegal patterns are eliminated, and then PBS continues to look at the legal patterns available to you from your subsequent layers. In this case, the flight attendant was scheduled for 9 days off from their preferred days in her layers. Layer 1, she got the 22nd, 23rd. Layer 2, the 3rd, 4th. And remember, like Linda said, you can't have a standalone reserve day except for at the end of the month. So when she got the 3rd and the 4th, she also had to have the 2nd as a day off. Then in layer 3, she got the 10th, 11th, and layer 4, the 17th and 18th. From the 24th to the 31st, starting on the 24th is coverage needed days, going all the way to the 23rd or the 31st, with the exception of the 28th and 29th at her seniority. Because that block is 8 days, somewhere in there, there's got to be 2 days off, so she's going to get the 28th and the 29th off. By layer 5, she bid for the 2nd off, which has already been scheduled, the 9th and the 16th. She only has 1 remaining day off that she can be scheduled. Both the 9th and the 16th would have been legal patterns. PBS chose the 16th for her. On this example, this is a more junior flight attendant. She has 11 CN days, pretty much spanning from the 17th through the 31st. She again bid the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, and 26th off. Keep in mind that long block of days off from the 25th through the 31st is going to have 2 days off somewhere in between, yet they're all coverage needed dates for her. So the possible legal patterns are going to start with reserve days on the 17th and 18th because those are coverage needed dates for her. Either the 16th or the 19th is going to have to be, will be attached to those so that she has at least 3 available days. But PBS hasn't decided that yet. It just knows the 17th and 18th have got to be reserve days for this flight attendant. Once again, looking from the 23rd to the 31st, she's going to have 2 days off somewhere in this block to create a legal pattern. This flight attendant, she was actually given the 25th and the 26th. She bid these days off in her layer. Something had to be given in this layer, and that's what she was given. They also gave her the 16th off to give her those 3 days, and then from her layers, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, the 9th, 10th, and 11th. We wanted to show you these examples because sometimes it just seems like, why did this junior flight attendant get these days off and I didn't? This is the reason why when they have a block of days and they have to have days off within, it's going to be given in there. I want to add too, as I said, once a holiday is designated as a holiday and a flight attendant is forced to work that day, everybody junior will also be working on that day. At this flight attendant seniority, the holiday did not kick in on the 25th, so she wasn't held to that day. It didn't kick in until somebody junior to her. If it had, she would have been forced to work on the 25th.
Okay, and that's, so, you probably have heard about half-month logic and the distribution of open time. This is basically, there is actually logic, and it's in PBS programs that when it distributes the flying and looks at open time remaining, that open time has to be spread out through the month, so it is not all stuck around like the holiday. So what this does is when it's triggered, it happens when there's an uneven distribution of flying combined with the flight attendant behavior. And we all see this in December and sometimes in November, when the majority of the flying is in the second half of the month, but most flight attendants bid to work the first half of the month. So the logic that is triggered helps to spread out the open time. Now, the half-month logic is awarded. What it does, it caps the hours that could be awarded, let's say, in the first half. So, for example, December. Remember, December starts with the 2nd. So if the first 15 contractual days of the month would be going through the 16th. If you bid trips, any trips that originate within the 2nd through the 16th of December, the entire hours of the trip will count towards the first half of the month. So if a patch of 35 is generated, remember, it doesn't have to be the entire base. It could be triggered at a certain seniority, and that could change from base to base, and some bases it might not even trigger. But if you have a 35-hour cap, and you have a 20-hour trip that originates on the 16th, those 20 hours would count towards the first half of the month, which means out of the 35-hour cap, you already have been awarded 20, so it would only look to award you an additional 15 hours. Now, remember when you may want to consider how this cap could affect you, especially if you're bidding high time, you need lots of waivers. Thank you. So the waivers could actually trigger that most of your flying would be awarded in the second half of the month. Hang on, the mouse just died. There we go. Sorry. There we go. How should I go back?
Are you trying to go to PBS?
Yes, actually, I wanted to go back one page. Oh, there we go. Holiday bidding strategy. So let's go to PBS and actually look on what you potentially can do. Go to layer, I already entered a bid for this so that I can show you. Remember, we don't know the CN days until after PBS has been processed, right? So what that means is when you're bidding, you're realistic when you determine whether or not your seniority may be required to cover a popular holiday and or dates surrounding it. So for example, if you're unsure if your seniority can hold off December 25th, plan your bid accordingly. Bid the date off in layers 1 through 4, and you do that by going, remember, as a line holder, you go to days off tab. So layers 1 through 4, you can change your layers over here, you bid off the 25th. And here you can actually make it simple. You add this bid in layer 1, 2, 3, and 4. You add your bid. Now you can see up in the little schematic that all 4 layers show the 25th as a day off. In your layer, you then put in 4 trips that you want in layer 1. So let's say you prefer pairing like this, you add that to layer 1, you widen it by layer 2, you add it as 2-day trips, and layer 3 and 4, remember, you need to relax your preferences for your trips as you go along. So in layer 3, we also add 3-day trips. And remember, those are, keep it relaxed. Don't add too many restrictions to these layers. The one that I added here, let's say you want to fly no more than 2 legs a day. So maximum landing per duty, I added that to layer 1, 2, and 3. But once I get to layer 4, I just added 3 days and not much else, because remember, you still have the other request of the 25th to be off. Now, if you, so remember, if you're not sure that you can hold the 25th off, in layer 5 and 6 for bidding strategy, add trips that touch the 25th. In this particular case, I went in and I said, okay, if I have to fly on the December 25th, I want a turnaround. Because remember, you could do a turnaround that's an early morning sign-in, really early, so 6 o'clock in the morning, that gets you back by 2 o'clock. That way you have the evening and the afternoon with your family. Or you could add trips that have a late night sign-in so that you can spend the day with your family or friends and then just go to work for a turnaround that night. The same thing, remember, you've got to relax your pairing pool. You've got to increase it. So on December 25th in layer 6, I added 2 days. And as you can see here, it added some pairings. So you started out with this, you see that green bar growing as you are relaxing the layers. Layer 5 and 6, it didn't add that many, but it did add some additional trips. In particular here, I did not add anything to layer 7, but that is the layer that you want to give the system some basic parameters to the type of trip you want, instead of having being awarded what is left over, because you do not want a PN pairing. PN means pairing nil. It didn't come out of your pairing pool. It was something that was left over that needed to find a home, and it found you. So make sure you put something in there, because PBS will award you what it has left over that needs to be covered. So this is a little bit about your holiday bidding strategy. What I've talked about will be in slides, so you can either listen to the video again or go to the PowerPoint and look at the slides. And here's the pictures. Now, Since we talked about holiday strategy, let's talk now about bidding a target credit range, also known as TCR. Now, this is for your basic bidding. I will tell you about the TCR, and then Jeff will follow up on how to bid trips alongside your TCR. Now, this property allows you to bid for a specific target credit range. The default is 70 to 90 hours. That means if you do not enter a TCR, it will award you anywhere between 70 to 90 hours. It will not award you anything outside 70 to 90 hours unless you ask for it. Hang on. All right. So the minimum you can bid for in PBS is 40. The maximum is 110. The range you have to bid in is a minimum of 5 hours. You cannot bid 40 to 42. Well, let me rephrase that. You can bid it, but PBS will look at it and say, oops, I need 5 hours, and it would adjust it to 40 to 45 hours. Anything below 70 that you bid is considered low. Anything you bid above 90 is considered high time. And here is one of those things that you want to be aware of when you are bidding trips. You've got to do the math. I used an example here. It's very simple, straightforward. You use a 15-hour trip. Four 15-hour trips adds up to 60 hours. 5 trips would be 75. And if you have 6 15-hour trips, that's 90 hours. If you were to put in a TCR of 80 to 85, PBS would not be able to accommodate you because the trips that you bid either add up to 75 or 90, so it wouldn't hit the TCR. You've got to hit a TCR that fits with the trips. As another reminder, as the system moves through each layer, TCR is accumulative. So if you bid in your first layer, 70 to 75, in your next layer you go up by another 5. The second layer would actually look at a TCR of 70 to 80 hours. Remember, it's accumulative. All right, here's a list of of instances where PBS would adjust your target credit range. We're not going to walk through all of them, but these are some of them. The PowerPoint will also have a hyperlink in it to a communication that had been sent out with a lot of examples on how PBS adjusts your TCR. Right. One other thing to remember when you bid for your TCR is your existing credit. Remember how Marty talked about the dashboard and she showed you where your existing credit would be? Don't forget to check it. You want to see how much you have, and you need to account for it when you bid. And existing credit can be generated by vacation, carryover trips, or, for example, jury duty. Because there's various things that could trigger that. Now, you can waive carryover credit for a sequence only. The way you will find it is you go into PBS. Let me see if we still have the screen up. We can do that right here live. You would go to Line, then you would look for the waive carryover credit. You have to click on it. Find it. It is towards the bottom. See, it says waive carryover credit. You elect it. Now, on this one, you see how it just says add this bid. It doesn't have any layers. It's an all or nothing property. You add it, it will be added to your layers. You can double check to make sure it's there. Go to layers, go to Line, waive carryover credit, yes. Now, the waive carryover credit allows for PBS to ignore any time that you carried into the month from a sequence, and it builds your TCR without it. Remember, this credit, even though it's not included in PBS, once your line is populated in FAST, once your schedule is final, it will add it back in, and then now it will count towards the TTS, okay? Towards the TTS maximum. Now, remember, it's an all or nothing. You bid it, it will be awarded. It's a guaranteed option. If you use clear bids within your bid, it will not remove this property. The only way you can remove the waive carryover is go in and delete the bid. Also, it will not waive legalities that are associated with the carryover sequence, okay? All legalities still apply, 24 and 7, 35 and 7, etc. So, just as an FYI. Real quick, we have, excuse me, pre-planned absences that can also generate an existing credit. You have that on your schedule. You would see it on your dashboard that Marty pointed out earlier. Here, for example, you have something, you have some kind of carryover credit. I believe that might be the place that it's showing. And you can remember, if you have a pre-planned absence, PBS will not award you a trip that would conflict with the pre-planned absence. Okay, and with this, I'm handing this over to Jeff, who now will tell you all about how to bid for the trips. Remember your TCR. There was one thing that I forgot to add real quick. I started off by telling you, there's actually two ways you can bid for your TCR. You can either pick the number of hours that you want to fly, you feed that in as a TCR, and then tell PBS the type of trips you're looking for, and it will find the trips that correlate with your TCR. However, if you're trip-driven, as I like to call it, you can look at the trips that you like, and then add up the trips, do the math, add up the trips, and then build your TCR based upon the trips that you are bidding. So there's two ways to go about it, and Jeffrey's going to talk about the trip bidding.
No, that's...
Before you do, I'm sorry, we got a couple quick TCR questions
Yep.
while you were presenting. The first one is, can I have two TCRs, one for layers 1 through 4 and another for layers 5 through 7?
Yes, you can. But remember, they are accumulative. And here is the important thing. Let's say you are bidding high in layers 1 through, what did you say, 1 through 4?
1 through 4.
You're bidding high in layers 1 through 4. So you put in, by layer 4, you have accumulated a target credit range, let's say, of 95 hours to 110. But you're saying, okay, these are all for specific trips. But if I can't hold any of those trips, I now want low time. Now I only want, only give me like 50 to 60 hours in layer 5 through 7, because I can't hold the trips that I want. Remember, it's accumulative. There is no way to do that, because if you now enter 50 to 60 hours in the last 3 layers, the cumulative, it will now read a TCR of 50 to 110 hours in all in those last layers. You could make use of an option. It's called clear bid, and we talked about clear bid in our last PBS Town Hall, and you can view that. Go to the APFA website and review it there. Clear bid something is when you clear bid, you are telling the system, reset, clear everything out and start over. And that will be the only way that you could actually now bid low. Josh, you said there was a second question?
Yes, the next question, let's see. Do we add the deadhead hours of the trip or not in TCR?
Deadhead is credit at 100, it's pay and credit at 100 hours, so it's already included.
Okay.
You don't have to do anything with that. 100%, right.
Do we add the actual flight hours or the trip value?
The trip value.
Got it. Those are all the TCR questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Those are very good questions. Thank you, Linda,
You're welcome, Jeff.
for talking about that. There's many things that go into your PBS bid, and like Linda mentioned, trips are very important. The trips that you bid are a very important component of that. Whether you're hours driven or whether you're trip driven, at the end of the day, the system has to have trips to award you. So that's what we're going to talk about right now. There we go. So we're going to talk about generic bidding the trips you'd like to fly. Generic bidding tells PBS what types of trips you'd like to fly. You're not really telling it exactly, I want this trip on this day. You're saying, I want this, these are the types of trips I would like to fly. It applies generic pairing properties to create a pool of trips for PBS to consider awarding you. So if you're going to bid generically, you're going to go to the pairing tab. Marty walked us through your dashboard, so this is literally just a screenshot of that portion of your dashboard. You would click on the pairing tab, and then it populates two options, either add more properties or search pairings. So to bid generically, you click on add more properties there. And there are 32 generic pairing properties you can use to create your generic bid. So that's everything from a layover, report times, release times, your pairing types, pairing length, how many calendar days you want your trip to be. There's 32 different ones, and so this is the exhaustive list of those right here. An example, like I just mentioned a second ago, an example of a generic bid is prefer pairing type with the preference of IPD. So if you wanted to only bid, you're saying with the way this bid is expressed here on the screen, prefer pairing type IPD in my layer 1, I'm saying I'll take any IPD trip at my base. And in this case, that's 2,771 individual positions. It's bids by position. That number there indicates how many positions you're bidding for, not necessarily sequences, but the positions as well. All right. So you can also add, if you have multiple IPD trips in your base and you want to say, hey, I want IPD trips, but I would first like PBS to consider, say, for example, Paris and Buenos Aires, as opposed to all the IPD trips. You see how in layer 1 that narrowed it down to 410 pairings or positions in that bid. So this is how you can use your generic bids to kind of steer PBS to the trips that you would like to be flying. Specific bidding is I'm bidding for specific trips, selecting the exact sequence number on the exact date that you would like to fly. So to input your specific bids, you click on search pairings, and then you add where we were talking before on your dashboard. You click on pairings, and then underneath that, those two options populate, and you would click on the one on the right that's search pairings. And this is essentially the bid sheet. So I'm actually going to go over here really quick we'll take you to PBS, the live, let's see. Josh, am I in here somewhere? I'm already logged in.
Let me get to your stuff.
Thank you. There we go. So that's me.
Yeah, okay, you're good.
All right. So I'm going to take you so we're going to go to the pairing tab, like I said, and we're going to go to search pairings here at these two options here, search pairings. And this is where we're going to look at, this is essentially the electronic bid packet here, or your bid sheet. And it's 500, for me in Charlotte for the month of December, it's 586 pages worth of trips. So just as an example, let's say that I like to fly Honolulu trips, and I would really like to have only Honolulu trips that depart on Mondays. Those are 3-day trips. So I have selected this trip on the 6th. So to do that, I would literally just come and click on the date here. I'm going to unselect it really quick, and I'm going to show you how that works. So I come here to the electronic bid package. I see my Honolulu trip that departs on the 6th. I'm going to click on that, adding it to layer 1. And so as you see, I've done that 4 times for every Monday trip, the 6th, the 13th, the 20th, and the 27th. So I'm literally telling PBS, I only want these trips, the Honolulu on the 6th, the 13th, the 20th, and the 27th. So that's my layer 1. So that's an example of bidding specific bidding. I do want to add a word of caution here. You do want to be careful when bidding specific and generic in the same layer. So another tab that we're going to focus on today is the layer tab. This is basically your Amazon shopping cart. So if you're online and you're shopping, and I've got actually a cart full of stuff that I don't necessarily buy it all at once sometimes. But so this is your shopping cart. This tells you basically what you're buying here in all your layers. And so you're gonna see here that I have all 4 of these Honolulu trips in my layer 1. And since Honolulu is by contractual definition as NIPD, sometimes people are tempted to qualify their specific bids with a pairing type, for example, like NIPD. So if I add, actually, let me show you up here at the top. So if we have those 4 NIPD trips, that's 32 positions or 32 choices that I'm offering the system. If I were to qualify that with the pairing type NIPD, that's a generic property right there. And so I actually am now adding every single NIPD trip. In addition to those 4 specific trips, I'm adding every single NIPD trip in there because I'm saying, hey, I want these 4 Honolulu trips, and also I want NIPD trips. And so that's, now you see that I have 2,936 pairings in that layer 1 just by adding this one property here. So if you don't really mean I want all the NIPD trips in layer 1, you don't need to qualify your bid here of the 4 Honolulu trips. The only exception to that rule of bidding generic and specific in the same layer is position order. So I'm going to add my position order over here. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. This is not really my, to save us some time here, I'm just going to go in order. But if I had a, let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8, I can't remember exactly how many positions are on Honolulu. It's probably a 777-200, so probably only 8, or probably 8 since it's on IPD. Anyway, so we see how adding the generic pairing property of preferred position orders doesn't do anything to my total pairings here. So that's the one exception to the specific and generic, combining a generic and specific bids together. So let's go back to my example of adding the NIPD pairing type to this. So everything is considered equal in a layer. So if I have those 4 Honolulu trips, and in addition I have the generic property of all these NIPD trips, all 2,936 of these trips are considered equal to the system. Since they're all in layer 1, the system doesn't know that the specific pairings or the specific trips that I've bid are any more important than the generic property of the rest of the NIPD trips that I put in there. The system doesn't know that those 4 specific trips are any more important. Anything that you have in a given layer is considered equal. So by that, what that means is that you may not necessarily hold the 4 specific trips you want because PBS is going to look at all of those trips. So we're going to go back to your layers, back up here to your layer tab. And so we can see, if we go to view pairing set, we're going to see that I have all these. So there's 49 pages worth of trips now in my pairing set. Again, this is kind of like my Amazon cart. I'm going to go review my purchases before I click save or purchase. So I have my Honolulu trips here. And then if we fast forward, say, to page 25, I've got all these other NIPD sequences, and it's not really a full NIPD. There's only 1 or 2 legs here that actually operate in the Caribbean here. So you just want to be very careful and review everything that you're doing by going to your view pairing set to make sure that what you're expressing, what you're telling PBS, what's actually there reflects what you think you want to be bidding or what you're actually bidding. And we do want to encourage you to bid in all 7 layers. Let's see what I did here to create all these conflicts here, because I've got a bunch of zeros. So you want to be sure to bid in all 7 layers. So I've got my 4 Honolulu trips in layer 1. I'm going to unselect this because I don't want to combine generic and specific in my layer 1. And then layer 2, okay, so what I did the 4 specific Honolulu trips in layer 1. In layer 2, I said, okay, if I can't hold all 4 of those trips, now I'm willing to take Honolulu. I bid it generically in layer 2, any Honolulu trip throughout the month. And then in my layer 3, I like to dream bid a little bit, so I put Munich in layer 3. We have Munich out of Charlotte. And I'm saying, since I'm fairly junior, I don't think I'm actually going to hold Munich at my seniority. So I'm going to say generically, give me any Munich trip that I can hold in layer 3. And then in layer 4, I'm adding any London trip. Again, generically, I'm saying, consider me for any London trip that doesn't conflict with anything that has previously been awarded to me. And then in layer 5, 6, and 7, I've added some more properties. I've added NIPD, generically, NIPD trips, preferred duty period 2. A duty period is how many, a duty period is how many times, what is it, how many times you put on your jet jammies? Is that how you like to describe it, Marty?
That's it.
A duty period is how many times you put on your uniform in a sequence, in a trip. So in this case, I'm saying I only want to put my uniform on twice, 2 duty periods. So a duty period is from report to relief on a day. So I could, so in this case, if it's an NIPD trip, I could technically have since it's 2 duty periods, it could actually touch more than 2 calendar days. So this property up here in layer, I'm going to add in layer 5 is preferred pairing length. That tells the system how many calendar days I would like that trip to be. So there's a difference between pairing length and duty period. Does that make sense?
So I can have a 3-day pairing length, but a 2 duty periods
Yes.
over those 3 days.
Correct.
Exactly. Yep.
You only got dressed to go to work twice.
Maybe only got dressed twice.
That might be the case too.
So, yeah. So anyway, I just added a whole bunch of other generic properties to get here to layer 7. Now, so we just want you to make sure that the system has enough trips to choose from when awarding you. So by the time I get to layer 7, I have 3,359 pairings. So this, it adds, it's like an add-on game. Layer 1, I have 32. Layer 2, I added 208 pairings for a total of 240. Layer 3, I added another 153 pairings. You just want to keep adding to your pairing pools, giving the system more and more trips to bid from, but you're using your layers to prioritize your trips. You're telling the system, layer 1 is what I really want to hold. If I can't hold that, or if I can only hold some of that, go to layer 2, give me as much of that as possible, and if it still can't complete my award in layer 2, it's going to keep going until it can complete your award all the way up through layer 7. So that's why it's important to continue bidding all the way through to layer 7. Even with senior people, you just never know what's going to happen. You don't know when someone senior is going to come in, someone senior to you is going to come into the base and perhaps start outbidding you on what you usually hold, and so you want to just have some backup trips by the end of your bid, just in case, because I would rather choose the trips that I don't want as opposed to having the system tell me what I'm going to get if I didn't bid enough. The other thing we want to point out is we want to make sure that none of your pairing properties, you're not using any pairing properties that would create a conflict. So let's say in layers 3 and 4, that's Munich and London, those are all IPD trips, but they're actually more than likely 3-day trips. So if I were to add the property prefer pairing length 2, meaning calendar day, that's 2 calendar days, I would say I want a Munich trip that is worth, that is 2 days, or a London trip that is worth 2 days. If you go back up here to our pairing set here, we have zeros in 3 and 4 because that's creating a conflict. There are no 2-day Munich trips in Charlotte, and there are no 2-day London trips in Charlotte. So that's why you want to just pay attention to your pairings by layer here to make sure that the things that you're expressing in PBS make sense and don't create any conflict. Also, your line and days off property. So you use your pairing properties here to tell the system what kind of trips you would like to bid and hold, and then you use your line and days off properties to tell the system how you would like your trips structured on your schedule. So I'm going to go down here. So just as an example, in layer 1, we see that my Honolulu, those 4 specific Honolulu trips that I bid in layer 1. Do I need to slow down? Am I talking too fast? I know I get going here, and I had a lot of caffeine this morning. Josh is nodding his head. I need to slow down. Thank you. So I had those 4. I had those 4 Honolulu trips in layer 1, but then I'm going to use. I also in this bad example, I'm using a line property of work block size here. So I'm telling the system I want a work block of no less than 1 day and no more than 1 day. So I want I want only 1 day at a time. The default work block size is 1 to 6. So I'm giving it a restriction here. I'm saying I want a work block size of only 1 day. Well, that's not really compatible with the trips that I have in my layer 1 because those trips are actually 3-day trips. And then in addition, I'm saying, hey, I want minimum days off between work blocks. I want no less than 5 days off between my work blocks. So by bidding those 2 things in conjunction with my Honolulu trips, I might be able to, at my seniority, hold all 4 of those Honolulu trips, but it's not going to be able to complete my award in that layer because it does not make any sense that I want 1-day trips with 5 days off when I'm actually asking for 3-day trips with only 4 days off in between. So that's why you just want to make sure that all of the properties that you're using make sense together and are going to help you be successful at the time PBS goes to read what you're saying. Because PBS is literal. It's going to look at that, the way I have my layer 1, it's going to look at that and go, what the heck is Jeff thinking? This is not, this trip doesn't exist. This 3-day Honolulu trip with a work block size of 1, days off 5 is not, this does not exist. I'm going to talk about, so let's go back here really quick. When you're reading your PBS bid, you're reading it actually vertically. So if you come over here to, let's go back over here to layer 5 where I have multiple generic properties going on at once. So we're going to read all of layer 5 down here starting from the top. So I have preferred duty period 2, again, 2 duty periods. How many times am I putting on my jet jammies during this sequence? I want pairing type NIPD. I want my minimum layover time to be 13 hours, and I don't want to do more than 2 landings or 2 legs a day. So this is how you read your PBS bid. You start at the top and you go down and you see everything that you're putting in there. And again, you can always go back to your pairing set, and let's see, go to my layer 5 pairing set, and I can see what those 4 properties together have given me. So we can look at the details. And I remember I asked for nothing less than a 13-hour layover. So this layover is 21 hours. I've asked for no more than 2 legs a day. So there's going to be nothing in this layer that has more than 2 legs or 2 landings per day. Make sense? All right. So we're also going to talk now about line holder bidding days off. We want to reiterate that the only place that you can bid days off for reserves is on the reserve tab. So if you're a reserve and you're bidding over here on this calendar here, then you're not bidding in the right place. We're talking about line holder bidding days off right now. Let's go back up here to layer 1. So let's just say I wanted to bid the 6th off. All I would have to do is click on the tile where that, on the 6th on the calendar, and add that bid, and it will shade it to, we'll call that teal, I think. It shades it to a teal color. That's telling this, it's a visual for me saying I'm bidding for that day off. So now if let's say I want to bid that off in every single layover, or layer, excuse me, I can actually, you don't have to do it 1 layer at a time the way I'm doing it. You can do it, let's see, go down to layer 7. Click it all the way across. Let's say I want the 6th off in every single layer. But in layer 1, I have those specific Honolulu bids. So if I bid for a day off on the calendar, but then I put a specific bid over top of that date, the system is going to prioritize the trip over the day off. If I'm bidding a day off in a layer with a specific bid, it's going to prioritize the trip. So if I can hold that trip, it will award me that trip, not looking at the day off that I bid. But in these subsequent layers, let's say layer 2, where I'm bidding, let's say I don't hold the trip on the 6th, and now PBS is going to layer 2 and it's looking at all the generic Honolulu trips that I've bid. It's not going to look to award me anything that touches the 6th. So that's in this case in layer 2, let's actually go to layer 2 so we're not looking at those specific bids to confuse us. So I'm bidding for the 6th off. I didn't hold the trip that departed on the 6th in layer 1. So now layer 2, the system is looking at the Honolulu bids. It's not going to look to award me anything that departs on the 4th because those Honolulu trips are 3-day trips, so 4, 5, 6. It's not going to look to award me the trip on the 5th, 6th, or 7th either. And also, I'd already bid this specific trip on the 6th, but let's say I hadn't. It's not going to look to award me any generic Honolulu trip that touches the 6th. Making sense?
Yes.
All right. Talking too fast?
Does that apply to line
Yes.
too?
So Linda talked about coverage needed, or excuse me, Renee talked about coverage needed dates for reserves. There are often coverage needed dates for line holders, especially in holiday months. We know that December is a very tricky month, and generally speaking, we all kind of want to have the same days off. Most people want to have basically from the 15th of the month off to the 31st. But unfortunately, not everyone can have Christmas off, not everyone can have New Year's Eve off, not everyone can have Christmas Eve off. So once the system gets to a point where it has more trips than more people are bidding to have the day off, and there are still trips left over, it's going to have to start restricting how many people can have that day off. So very recently, Marty put together a hotline that went out. It went out sometime last week, right, Marty? That discussed coverage needed and the historical data for the last the 2 years prior. So you did 2019 and
Yep.
2020?
Yes.
And we showed at where the coverage needed dates kicked in and at what seniorities. Now, and actually, I'll let you speak to that really quick because you do it so eloquently.
So it's your relative seniority when you're looking at the chart. You can go by the relative seniority. Obviously, your seniority numbers have changed between last year and the year before and now. So just kind of go by your relative seniority within your base. And I broke it down by each base, and it shows if you're the most senior person, what coverage needed dates you might have seen, down to the most junior person, and in some cases, I think there were bases for line holders that even had up to 12 or more coverage needed dates. So just go by your relative seniority number and take a look at those coverage needed dates. You'll see that between 2019 and 2020, even though our flying was vastly different, the coverage needed dates remained relatively the same. So take a look at those, and that'll help give you a guide as to what to expect this year.
Yes. Now that you said that, though,
Yeah, there's a caveat.
the caveat to this year, and this is an opinion, it's not fact, we'll see how it plays out, but I believe this holiday peak, what's the official name? The holiday peak payment, the holiday peak periods, the fact that the company is offering up to 300% for flying during the holiday peaks, I think that it's fair to assume that that's going to drive some bidding behavior. So the coverage needed dates may not look the same this year as they have in the past. If I were not working at APFA, I'd be bidding for every single day from the 23rd of December all the way to the 2nd of January, because I would be sucking up every piece of 300% that I could get. So that being said, I do want to talk about some strategies for bidding around the holiday peak period. So if you're trying to drive PBS, or you want to direct PBS to give you as much flying during the peak period as possible, and I think I said the 23rd, but I really meant the 22nd of December as the peak period. So what we're going to do here is there's multiple ways. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, sorry, that was a bad metaphor. All roads lead to Rome. All roads lead to Rome. So there's no right or wrong way to bid. There's just different strategies. And one of the strategies could be, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to go to layer 2 here, and I'm going to add, you could block off every single day except for those days in the peak period. And that would be telling the system that you want to fly. You're asking it to only look to award you trips. This is going to take me 1 second, but I just want to show you what this would look like. I'm kind of making this hard because I'm doing it in layer 2 instead of layer 1. My apologies. Boop. Okay, so I'm literally, again, this is a good exercise in practicing how to use your calendar here to bid days off. You literally click on the date on the calendar that you're bidding off. I'm unselecting layer 1 because I only want it, in this case, I only want it in layer 2. Because I want those 4 Honolulu trips too, so I'm going to leave those alone in layer 1. Okay, so the peak period starts on the 22nd. So if I wanted to tell the system, only look for trips that depart on the 22nd, so let's just say now I've got my Honolulu trips in layer 2, and this is the way the calendar looks. The way it stands now, it's only going to look to award me trips from the 22nd through the 31st. So that would be one way to instruct or lead the system to the trips that fall within the peak period. Another way of doing that is you could go to and bid specifically, go back to the bid sheet, and you can find the trips that you want that fall within that peak period. So let's just say I could bid for the Honolulu trip that departs on the 22nd. And I could also, just go through and bid all the trips specifically that you want that fall within that holiday peak period. Does anybody have anything that they want to add as far as strategies for that? Any creative thoughts there? Okay. All right. So yes, we're going back to, so when you use the calendar to bid for days off, again, it's only, the PBS will remove any pairing from the pairing pool that touches that calendar day. So in this case, it's removed every single trip in layer 2, all the Honolulu trips that touch the 4th through the 21st. It's removed them all from my pairing. That brings me, one last thing that I want to talk about here is your standing bid. Your standing bid is over here on the right-hand side of your dashboard. It's the last tab to the right. Your standing bid, you can use your standing bid as kind of a skeleton to what you want to use to import to your current bid every single month. It's also there in case you forget to bid. It will be red if you forget to bid. But if you're planning on using your standing bid and you're not going to import it, in fact, actually, I'm going to show you how to import it first. So many times we get questions on how to, if I make a mistake or if I want to change my mind, how do I start over? And so what you literally do is you just click on all the little X's here, and that's how you delete your bid. I'm going to empty out my entire current bid right now so I can show you what it looks like to export over my standing bid. So I have basically most of the same properties I have there are in my standing bid, were already in my current bid. So I'm going to click export to current bid, and that's going to take anything that's in my standing bid and export it over to my current bid. And so I'm going to go to back over here, and it's going to take okay, so right before we started, I made this little mock bid up really quick, and I had those 4 specific Honolulu trips in layer 1. I deleted them now, but so because you can only save generic, your standing bid can only consist of generic properties. You can't, because the specific pairings change every single month, you're not going to be able to save those into your standing bid. So when I imported my current bid over to my standing bid, it did not bring over those specific Honolulu pairings. That's why my layer 1 is empty. And so this is a good lesson. So layer 1 is empty, so since there's nothing in there, I didn't put anything in there. Actually, what that means is everything in the bid sheet is in layer 1 because I didn't express any preferences there. And so everything in the bid sheet is effectively in layer 1. So when you're importing and when you're exporting your standing bid over to your current bid, you want to take a look at your pairings by layer and make sure that what you actually think is in your standing bid is reflected in your current bid. Now, I remember a good friend of mine called me last month, and I think I told the story last month, so if you saw this before, but it was a good example. My friend, she called me and she goes, why? She's like, I bid the way I always do. I use my standing bid, and my Milan trips are not there. What did I do wrong? And I was like, I looked at it, and the way she had expressed her bid was correct. There was nothing that was conflicting. But then I went to the bid sheet, and I looked, and there was no Milan for the month of November. I think the last trip departed on the 1st, and she had a carryover trip that touched it. So it was giving her 0 Milan trips because there was no more Milan in that base for the month. So flying changes every single month. You just want to make sure that your standing bid is updated and kept current to reflect the flying that is actually in your base. Another tip for using your standing bid. So if I don't have anything in my current bid and I just want the system to read my standing bid, don't touch anything in your current bid. If you haven't exported anything over from your standing bid, but I were to say touch one single day off on my calendar, that constitutes a current bid, and it would turn off my standing bid. And we have seen too much of that. It's very sad because flight attendants are like, the system, I bid all these things in my standing bid, and I didn't get a single thing. And then we go and look, and it's like, in one case last month, the person had literally, they had bid for 1 day off on the calendar and had done nothing else. They had assumed that it would read their standing bid by inputting one bid, as simple as bidding a day off. It turns off your standing bid. So my general rule is always export your standing bid over every month just to make sure that you have something in your current bid. You can review your bid and see what trips are actually populating. So I think that's, this question, Renee just passed me a couple of questions over, but this one is actually a very good question. So I talked earlier about position order. I'm going to go back here and I'm just going to set up my position order. And I'm going to do, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Let's just say the question is, can I bid different position orders in the same layer? The simple answer is you can do whatever you want, but it's not advisable. If you put 2 separate position orders in the same layer, let's just say I am a purser. And so I'm going to go back and modify my bid here really quick. I'm going to put Honolulu in layer 1, and then I'm going to move everything over. I'll undo these. I'm going to add generic IPD. Let's hope there's some more IPD in my base next month. I don't even know. We'll see what happens here. So I've got Honolulu in layer 1, I've got Munich, London, and then generic IPD in layer 4. Let's see if that actually, okay, yeah, we got some other IPD stuff in, in Charlotte in the month. Anyway, so back to my, my position order. So let's just say I'm a purser, and I really want to have purser on all these trips, all these IPD trips, because, you know, $7.50 an hour. Who doesn't want $7.50 an hour extra? But in addition, I say, okay, so I want purser first, but then I'm going to go in, and let's say I have, and the same person who called me about Milan makes this mistake a lot too. You know who you are. They do a position order purser only, and then they add another position. Let's say I like to be galley, so what's that, position 5? I like to be position 5 or 2. So let's say I also add those into, those are my IPD trips there. So I've got position order purser, or 1, and then also, additionally, I have position 5 and 2. That's creating a conflict. You're giving the system 2 different choices. You're not either or, and so the system is going to choose for you. So you're not necessarily, and we've seen this hundreds, if not thousands of times. The person's like, well, how come that junior person held purser and I'm senior, blah, 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 and you look at their award, their bid, and you're like, well, you bid 2 different position orders in that same layer, and unfortunately for you, the system went to.
So what they could do though is have 1, 5, 2. Right?
Yep.
And just have it all in one line.
So that would be, if you were okay with those 3, then you could put them in. But what happens is, the reason why, if you're a purser and a senior, you would need to be it's kind of a senior purser strategy. I'm purser, but I may not be able to hold purser on every single trip. So if I do 1, 5, 2, if it lands on a trip, it's gonna award me position 1 if it's available. But let's say, and another day, another trip, I'm senior enough to hold it, but I'm not senior enough to hold it as purser. It will then go to 5 or 2. But there are other trips throughout the month that I could hold as purser only. So if you really wanted only to look at purser trips first, you should bid the position 1 by itself, and then you could, in later layers, you could add 5 or 2. Now, we'd have to adjust we'd have to adjust the other stuff, but you might bid only position 1 first, or whichever your most desired positions are first, and then in another layer say, okay, if I can't hold that position, then I want the same trip, say Honolulu, but in a different position in a different layer.
I think the big issue that flight attendants have is they're bidding for positions on a wide-body aircraft, and then different positions when they're bidding for a narrow-body aircraft. And I think when they're bidding those in the same layer, they want different position orders. But once again, PBS is seeing it in layer 1, picking which one they're going to go with.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a couple questions. First one, if you bid 3 IPD series on layer 1, are they awarded high time first?
Say that again?
If you bid 3 IPD on layer 1, are they awarded high time first?
Like 3 different cities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything in the layer is considered equal. So not necessarily. So if all 3 of those trips, let's just assume that you can hold all 3 of those trips, the system would choose which one to. The only caveat would be, Linda.
Well, it depends. So it depends on your It depends on your TCR. So if you, as I said, as Jeffrey said, everything in one layer is considered equal. So let's say you bid 3 different trips, and you could be awarded all 3 trips. It will, if it's legal to award it. However, if, let's say you have 2 trips that kind of overlap, it could give you one or the other. PBS does run in the background and calculate what you can hold in later layers, for example. And it is programmed, it's program driven to give you the highest award, the highest layer award. So let's say it can give you trip 1 and 2, but then the next trip would, like to complete your line, it would have to go all the way down to layer
4 to finish your line. If, however, it could award you the first trip 1 and 3, and then complete your award by layer 3, remember, different composition of trips, then it would choose to give you trip 1 and 3, because overall it completes your award by layer 3 rather than going down to layer 4 or 5 to give you trip 1 and 2. I hope that kind of makes sense. It's like a little puzzle that PBS does very well in the background. It calculates, but it is driven to give you the highest layer award possible. But in general, it's all trips are equal. So it's not always a guarantee what you get.
And that helps to explain, Linda, why PBS takes 3 days to run.
It helps to explain when you have, just as an FYI, when you run a solution for a base like say Boston or San Francisco, it's smaller, doesn't have international flying, it can complete in 3 or 4 hours. You get to Dallas, where you have international, not just long range, extended long range, super extended long range. Sometimes you have for 6 days, right, if you reschedule. Anyhow, so you have larger trips, you have a multitude of languages, and 6,000+ flight attendants. PBS takes about 14 or 15 hours just to complete a single run. Or more, just to figure out, but you have to do more than one run, because we never, trust me, we don't go with just the first thing. We always look to get the best award possible for the base on all levels. So sometimes we need to do, I think in Chile we did one time 42 different PBS runs to get to a decent solution. So that was, I'm sorry, didn't mean to talk so. All right, let's go on with bidding.
Okay, we still have a couple more questions for this section. What happens if you bid, quote, too many positions?
That's a good question. If you bid a position that doesn't exist,
It won't.
You'll get an error message. So if I'm on a layer where I only have 737 pairings, so that's 4 positions, if I bid past layer 4, I'm going to get an error message saying, what does it say? This
I don't know. I will.
It's some sort of an error message, and it won't let
I'll go look.
It won't let me.
Does not exist.
I'll go look.
Another question that we got a little bit ago was someone wants to bid Hawaii with 2 days off in between the Hawaii trips, and since I have Hawaii up here in my my bid anyway, so I've got Honolulu in layer 1. I'm going to unselect the position 1 just for kicks here, and let's say I only want 1 Honolulu trip at a time. So I'm going to use my work block size. It's a 3-day trip, so I'm going to say work block size 3. So minimum 3, maximum 3. So no less than 3 days, no more than 3 days. It's a Honolulu trip, so it couldn't be less than 3 days. I put that in layer 1. But then I also want to make sure that I have 2 days off between my Honolulu trips. So I'm going to go to the days off tab, and I'm going to bid minimum days off between work blocks. And then I'm going to select 2, and I put that in layer 1. So I'm going to go back to my layer tab here, and I'm going to show you what I've done. So in layer 1, I've got my generic pairing property Honolulu. So I'm saying give me any Honolulu trip throughout the month that I can hold. I want a work block size of no more than 3. So that's telling the system I only want 1. I don't want back-to-back Honolulu trips. I only want 1 Honolulu trip. And in addition here, I want 2 days off minimum 2 days off between my work blocks. That says minimum. So it could be 3 days off between work blocks, but if I can be awarded this, it will not give me any less than 2 days off between work blocks.
When Jeff bids specific trips in layer 1, position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, do those positions carry over into the next layer if I bid generic?
Good question. No. You have to bid in you don't have to, but your position order is layer specific. So if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in layer 1, and then in layer 2, I don't input a position order at all, it's going to go to the default, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, how many ever positions are in the airplane, it's going to go to that. So if Honolulu is 9 positions, I can't, is it 9? It's 8 or 9, I guess, it's because it's NIPD. If it's 8 or 9 positions, and I only bid 1 through 5 in layer 1, and then in layer 2 I have my generic Honolulu, and I don't put in a position order, it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in that order.
I'm on reserve in December and I have 10 vacation days in December. How many additional days off am I allowed to bid?
Oh, actually, just this is for everybody. There is a proration chart in the PBS guide. And if you remember, Marty showed you where you can find the PBS guide, the crew change. It is also on the APFA website. To give you a real quick idea, I'm sorry, you said reserve? Yes.
Yeah,
So
we
there's 10 days of
have
vacation.
10 days of vacation.
So the way you read, I'm so sorry, Jeff, do you want?
No, I was going to say it's also in the contract. It's on page 10-14 in the contract, the proration chart.
Yes, but the proration chart in the contract is under reserve. The line holder proration chart is in the PBS guide.
Okay.
Because it was slightly different. So for reserve award, if you have 10 days of vacation, the way you read the chart is first you look to see if it's a 30 or 31 day month. Then it actually says how many days are you available. So December, even though it runs through December 31st, is a 30-day month because it starts on the 2nd. So you look on the chart where it says 30 days, then you look at days available. So fortunately, we gave me easy math. 30 days available, you have 10 days. I know that you're only available for 20 reserve days. Now, mind you, very important, these proration charts only apply if you have 7 or more days of vacation. They do not apply if you have 6 or fewer days, okay? 7 days or more. 10 days, obviously, it's more. So if you're available for 20 days, you would look at the chart where it says available days 19 to 21. It means in addition to your 10 days of vacation, you get an additional 8 days off. And the proration chart on the in the PBS guide will tell you that the breakdown will be for an additional 8 days off. 3 of them will be flex days and 5 of them will be golden days. So make use, learn where that PBS guide lives so you can access it and go look at information. Right. Was that it?
Yep. Let's go ahead and continue and then we'll come back to some of the questions at the end.
All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about buddy bidding. When you are buddy bidding, please make sure, sorry, I have to run through Jeff's screen while he was live online with you. If you are going to be buddy bidding with someone, please make sure to check the buddy bid checklist. It's published on the APFA webpage. It gives you many different steps that you need to verify before submitting your bid. You may buddy bid with up to 4 buddies. If you decide you want to buddy bid with someone, you just enter their employee numbers, and they're going to get something that says they can either accept this buddy or reject it. So make sure if somebody sends it and you want to accept it, that you hit that accept button. If you have no desire to fly with this group of people, of course, then you can reject it. PBS is going to take the Initiators Award and use this for the followers layer 1 bid. So PBS is going to go through all 7 layers of the initiator and complete an award. And once that's done, that award becomes the buddy's layer 1 bid. It's important that the followers remove any other bids from layer 1, because if you have bids in layer 1, you are going to have the initiator's award along with anything else you added in that layer, which could result in a broken buddy bid.
When there's a qualification, when PBS awards the initiator, it's going to look for open positions to satisfy all the buddies. So if there's 3 buddies in the group, the initiator is going to be awarded a sequence that has 3 positions open. But PBS doesn't know if these have qualifications or not. It just knows there's 3 positions open. So once it gets to the buddies, if one of those positions requires a qualification, only one of those buddies is actually going to get awarded that sequence. So right now, PBS does not have the ability to foresee whether the open positions require a qualification. The waivers bid by the initiator will be added to the follower's Layer 1 bid, but it's important to consider all waivers necessary in order to receive the best buddy bid. For example, the follower may have a carryover trip, and in order to be awarded, they may have to waive 37 in order to be awarded from the initiator's Layer 1 award, or from the initiator's award. So keep in mind those waivers may be different for the followers than they are for the initiator. So the followers may want to add some additional waivers to make sure that they're able to be awarded all of the trips. A little word about position order. When the initiator places their bids for positions, the initiator is always going to get the first position bid for. After that, the remaining open positions are going to be awarded in seniority order. So if seniority 20 is the initiator and bids for position 214, PBS is going to give the most senior person position 2, and then the next senior person will get position 1, followed by position 4. Over the last few months, we have seen a lot of bases that have minimum line constraints, or and sometimes 2 in each base. Keep in mind you're bidding together as a group, so whatever the most junior person in your buddy group, whatever constraints they have, that will be applied to all of the buddies in that group. Sometimes if you have a qualification, you may be forced to fly that. For instance, if you are a speaker, you may be required to fly sequences that require your qualification. Just keep that in mind because that can also break your buddy bid.
Oh. Okay, it's me again. We are going to touch really quickly on vacation low. We got a couple of questions already about vacation. So you can bid vacation low if you have 7 or more days of vacation in a single bid month. If you have 7 days, but they cross 2 bid months, that's not considered. All 7 days have to fall within the same contractual month. So when you try to bid vacation low, you can bid a TCR anywhere between within 40 to 69 hours. That's considered low. You have to do it in your first layer. Because remember, PBS does a global run before it starts the awarding process. And in that run, it actually will look for people that bid vacation low. System knows Marty has 10 days of vacation, and she is bidding, 40 to 60 hours. I'm so sorry, that's not going to work. Let's say, yeah, that works. 40 to 60 hours. She wants vacation low. It puts a little mark on her and says, oh, she gets awarded before potentially a more senior flight attendant that doesn't have at least 7 days of vacation can hold low time. She would get it first, okay? However, there is a caveat, of course, coverage needed days and a minimum line constraints, the one that Renee just talked about, could impact your award. So depending on your TCR vacation days, if you have PN days, your award for vacation low might not be honored, okay? Remember, there's lots of moving parts to it. You have a priority, but not a guarantee. I have a couple examples here. Let's say, vacation low examples, let's say you have 7 days of vacation and you want to bid as low as possible. Now, when you have 7 days of vacation, the value of your vacation day will be 4 hours. We do the math, right? Remember the math. We all love math. 7 days times 4 hours gives you 28 hours. You already know from us talking about that it will be in your dashboard under existing credits. Now, you want to fly as low as possible. What you need to do, math, you know that the lowest hours you can bid in PCR is 40. We know that you have to have a minimum range of 5 hours. So you would bid a TCR of 40 to 45 hours, minus the 28, gives you the gives you the hours you need to bid for in your layer 1. So, do not bid a 30-hour trip. Bid a 30-hour trip that will not fit in your range of 12 to 17 hours. That kind of works through it. The second option that a lot of people ask is if you have quite a few vacation days. So let's say you have 14 days of vacation, which times 4 hours gives you an existing credit of 56 hours. You're saying 56 hours, I'm fine, I don't want to fly anymore. Well, except for the incentive that's there for December. But say you want 56 hours. So you have to bid a TCR in your first layer that will match with those 56 hours. So you could bid 52 to 57 because 56 fits in it, or 53 to 58. Doesn't really matter, as long as you have that 5-hour range and the 56 hours are encompassed by that range. The next step you do is in your layer 1, you, under the days off tab, you bid every day outside of your vacation as an off day. What you're telling PBS is, I have 56 hours, if I can hold vacation low, I don't want any trips. And that's what you're telling it in layer 1. Now, subsequent layers, obviously, if you can't hold it in layer 1, you're not going to hold it in layer 2. So in layer 2, you need to start adding trips and a range that you hopefully can hold, okay? And remember, it's a priority, not a guarantee. Let's talk real quick about vacation premiums. You will receive each applicable pay premium for your vacation hours if all hours awarded include, all awarded hours include the premium. So if you bid an IPD trip and it's a PERSA, all the trips, the only trips that you have is IPD PERSA, then those hours that pay for the PERSA will also apply to your vacation hours. Same with aft and speaker. There we go. I am so sorry. Next thing. Oh, and it's in section 3 of the JCDA where you can look up the pay for each item. Do you want to go do the next one? And Renee's taken over from the line and award.
All right, now PBS is done and you're reviewing your awards and you see that you were awarded LN. LN is line none. Your line properties were too restrictive. PBS could not find a combination of sequences that satisfied all of your line properties after reviewing all 7 layers. And it had to go outside of those layers in order to complete your award. Another code you may see on there is PN. PN means pairing none. There weren't enough sequences in your pairing pool that could be held at your seniority to complete your line. So, before you bid for next month, you're going to have to take a look to see, because maybe you're bidding outside of your seniority, and it's always hard to tell what people are going to bid every month. You may hold something one month, hands down, but the next month, because the trips somebody else normally holds aren't available, now they're going to hold the trips that you're bidding. So always keep in mind that every month the sequences and availabilities can change. We talked a little bit about coverage needed days earlier on for the reserves. But during the award process, PBS is continually looking to see how many days, the number of days on each day that have been awarded versus how many trips are still open. And coverage needed dates are decided based on this process. If your pairing pools don't include pairings that touch a needed coverage day, they're going to have to award you from outside of your layers to make sure this coverage day is needed. The problem is we don't know what the coverage needed dates are going to be before they start processing the awards. If we had a crystal ball, we'd love to be able to share that with you, but it's just not known. It's all based on the bidding by the flight attendants within the bay. Shuffles. Shuffles are something that confuses everybody, and they're so very difficult. For the most part, what's happening is Linda explained that with the TCR, and they're trying to look to see from all of your layers how they can build you those trips that fit within that TCR. Well, when it comes to one of those IPD trips and it's trying to decide which 3 of those IPD trips it can award you, it's going to say, oh, I can award this one by layer 3, not these 2, so we're going to remove it in a shuffle. And that would be a reason why, because they were trying to award you in the earliest layer possible when multiple trips could have worked. Most often it has to do with satisfying your TCR. I know for me, when I get a report that says, these were shuffled, what do? Linda gave me this really, really great chart to help me figure it out. But every time I have to fight it, and I pull Jeff into my office, and I'm like, Jeff, please help me out. Something's got to work here. And we really never have been able to find one. Those shuffles seem to be really the best solution for the flight attendant. But Jeff and I will still look at them when you send them in.
And just to real quick, on the APFA website, under the scheduling department under PBS, there's a document that explains shuffle. So if you have time, you can go read through it. But as Renee said, there's very rarely, I'm sorry, actually I cannot remember when I had a shuffle that was not correct, because it's math, all about the math. Right? You didn't think you're going to need it as a flight attendant, you do. Math is on. That was mine. Do you have any more questions?
We do. Let me get... Okay. How many vacation hours does one have to have within a month to be considered for low time award? To clarify, vacation holders are awarded low time out of seniority when one has how many hours?
Okay, I'm going to answer that. It's not the hours, it's the number of vacation days within the contractual month. If within a single month you have 7 or more days of vacation, you have priority to hold a low line over somebody that is senior to you that either has no vacation or has less than 7 days. It is a contractual provision. It's a priority, not a guarantee. Okay?
If I have 40 hours of vacation and only want to fly 40 hours, do I need to bid? I'm 278 out of 1,371.
Okay. Remember the example that I had up just a little bit ago? I had it for 56 hours, right? But it will work with 40. If your existing credit is 40, and I'm so sorry, may I have the mouse, please? And let me go to, where's my
You want yours? Okay, hold on, let me get yours.
All right. I'm sorry, I thought that the example was there. Okay. No, not this. I needed the PowerPoint. It went away. Oh, yeah, there we go. Stop.
This one.
Yep, actually, in the next one over, there we go. You see the bottom example? All right. Just replace the 14 days, because obviously if you have 40 hours, you have 10 days of vacation. So you replace that example. You follow that example. You bid a TCR that encompasses the 40 hours. In this particular case, it would have to be 40 to 45. There is no way around it. But then, in addition to bidding a TCR of 40 to 45 in your first layer, you will also bid every day outside your vacation as an off day in your first layer. This is how PBS knows. She has 40 hours, that's the minimum she can be awarded, or she, and she doesn't want any trips. And it will be that. If you cannot hold it, it will go to layer 2, and that's where you start adding trips. Obviously, this example will not work if you have less than 10 days. Because you only have 7 days, you're going to end up with only 28 hours of credit, which means you will have to supplement with trips to get to the minimum of 40 hours. Okay. Was that okay?
Yep.
Clear enough? Okay.
I'm number 23 out of 585 reserves. How do I also bid lines just in case additional line holders are needed? Because I did toggle LRD.
That is a great question. That's one we intended to discuss today. Yes, if you were showing a reserve in LRD and you toggle to line holder, and then you opened up PBS and you're still showing as a reserve, more than likely you'll be a reserve. But if perchance the system needs some more line holders, the people who toggle to be line holders would be selected. You'd be pulled first in seniority order. If for some reason there aren't enough people who would toggle to be line holders, then it would go in inverse seniority order. So that's why we suggest that people who toggle to line holder, people who are showing as reserves into LRD and toggle to line holder, bid what we call a 7 and 7. So bid your 7 layers as a reserve and also bid your 7 layers as a line holder. So it's really as simple as just putting in both bids. Bid your days off on your reserve days off on your reserve tab, and then go to the layer tab and bid your bid as you would a line holder. And the system is only going to read the one that applies to it. So by putting in a line holder bid, that's not going to give you a leg up in and being a line holder, but it's just there in case the system does need you as a line holder. That's the bid that it would read to award you.
Great. I have vacation December 3rd and 4th. Do I bid trips on December 3rd and 4th?
Okay. I'm going to take that. Is that okay, Jeff? Yeah. All right. Remember how we talked about pre-planned absences that show up on your calendar in PBS before you even go bidding? The 3rd and 4th will be there. It should be orange. So hang on one moment. It should be blocked out as orange. And remember how Jeffrey was talking about when you select pairings. Any pairings that touch your vacation will actually not be included in the pairing pool. You cannot bid PBS trips on top of your vacation, okay? Those days are blocked. It will not award you anything that will conflict with a pre-planned absence. So even if you try to, you cannot. It will take you can try. You can bid those trips, but the PBS is smart enough, it will take them out of the pairing pool. It will not award them to you. If you want to fly on your vacation, you have to wait till awards final, upload it into FOSS, and ETB opens. You can pick up to your heart's delight over vacation days.
Awesome, thank you. Carryover trips to January. Hours flown in January are not part of December TCR, correct?
Correct.
Sounds easy.
I've been talking.
I was waiting for a longer explanation.
No, I realize I sometimes explain in too much detail. So
No.
I'm going to keep that one short.
Thank you, Linda. If a trip has pay and credit, is that added into TCR? Example, GIG. What is GIG again?
Rio.
Rio, that's right. If Rio is 1940 but it has pay and credit of 1051, it is my understanding that 1051 would not be part of the TCR.
So your TCR.
That's TCR. Okay, so let me clarify something here. This is just a summary. From the way you are phrasing your questions, I think you're thinking of how we used to bid a long time ago, where that would have been true, but this is no longer true. So if you look at the value of the sequence, the value of the sequence will include the flying time and any pay and credit. So if GIG, like say you're flying out of, forgive me, let's say you're flying out of the East Coast and the total trip value is 19 something. That is what will be used for the TCO. It will include the paying credit, okay? So if you're working to Rio and you're deadheading back, it doesn't matter. It's not just the 10 hours or 12 hours that count towards TCO, the value of the sequence.
Thank you. Can I bid specific trips in layer 1 through 4 and generic trips 5 through 7, Jeff?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, that would be that would be my recommended strategy. If you want to bid specific trips, in my example that I was showing you earlier, I bid specific trips only in layer 1. That was just to give you the example. But yes, you could bid 4 layers of specific trips and then back yourself up with some generic bids in layers 5, 6, and 7. And in fact, that is how I would recommend it. We see a lot of specific bids where if you're bidding specifically and you're bidding in the same footprint of trips, you're not really backing yourself up with much because you're literally bidding within the same footprint. So yes, that would be my recommended strategy.
Great. Can you see how many flight attendants are on different trips in PBS?
You'd have to do that, go to the electronic bid package, and in the electronic bid package, it shows you how many positions are needed on each aircraft. It also indicates how many speakers the sequence needs. And also, in the electronic bid package, there's a chart that shows the aircraft types and where each one of those positions works. So utilize the PBS cover sheet in the electronic bid package to find out that additional information.
Great. Next we have, if I bid Honolulu on 26, 27, 28 in the same layer, what happens?
In fact, can you go to I actually put an example of this. If you can go to my bid, I don't actually need to. Go to me, and can you refresh mine real quick?
Just, yeah, click on this.
Oh, there we go, okay.
Squirrely.
So I actually set that up really quick. In layer 1 here, you can see that I put Honolulu on the 26th, Honolulu on the 27th, and Honolulu on the 28th. As you can see, you can't actually be awarded all 3 of those trips. You can't fly 3 trips that overlap. So in this case, if that was what exactly my layer 1 looked like, the system, because all trips are equal in that layer, the system is going to choose between the 3 of them. There's no way for you to preference in that layer which one of those trips that you would like to be awarded. So if you bid the 26th, 27th, and 28th in the same layer, it's a crapshoot at that point, assuming you can hold all 3.
Did you just say that?
Okay, next, are there any idiosyncrasies to bidding both reserve and line holder pairings, as I'm very close to the top of the reserve list?
I believe you already answered that.
Yeah, just bid 7 layers as a line holder, 7 layers as a reserve. It's really as simple as that.
Okay, so let's take this top one. If I add the following 3 persistent line properties, I know they persist starting with that original layer. My question is, if I can add 1, waive 30 hours and 7 days, 2, waive 24 hours rest in domicile, and 3, waive minimum domicile rest all in the same layer. Let's take that part first. What are the consequences of that?
The consequences, if you waive 24 hours rest in domicile, and you waive 30 hours, and so number 1, waive 30 hours and 7, you're giving the system the permission to award you more than 30 hours in 7 days. That's what that does. Number 2, you're giving the system to waive the requirement that your 24 hours rest be in domicile, meaning a calendar day in domicile.
So that basically means you're waiving it to where you could have your 24 hours rest on a layover
Yes.
instead of in domicile.
Yes, you're waiving it on it. So without any other restrictions, with like, so that the default is 6 days. If you waive that, then there's no restriction on how many days in a row that you could be awarded, as long as there's a 24-hour rest
Somewhere.
in there somewhere. So then the next piece of that,
Waive minimum domicile.
waive domicile rest all in the same layer. So if you waive your minimum domicile rest, you're saying I'm willing to go down to FAR minimums between my trips. So the consequences for all three of those together are you've waived a lot of your contractual rights. And it really, I mean, the one that gives me the most heartburn there is waive minimum domicile rest, because you're literally going down to, you know, eight hours and change between your trips. And on principle, I'm reluctant to use that one, because but if you're you have the right to do that. And so there's really, so that's the consequence. The consequence of that is you could be with, you know, whatever the minimum FAR is between, you know, depending on what type of trip it is, that's the consequence. You could be awarded very limited rest between trips.
May I add something to that?
Absolutely.
There is, I've got something to add. So if you go to the Flight Service website, you actually go to the PBS cover sheet. When you open it up, there is, the cover sheet contains the chart of what the buffer is, because PBS has a buffer. We all know that let's say minimum FAR would be 8 hours between two trips. 8 hours from release to report, right? However, PBS does have a buffer in it. Go check out the cover sheet. It has a beautiful chart that tell you when you are bidding in the system, what the buffers are, the applicable buffers alongside the waivers.
Is this the bid packet?
It's the bid packet.
Let's pull that up, actually, because we have another question about position, so let's show them where to find that.
You need to go to the Flight Service website.
I'm gonna open a new tab.
Okay, I'll let you.
So
Just a moment, it will show you where to find it.
portal, you can click up here, Flight Service website. Okay, and then you can take it from there.
Okay, so you're going to go to bidding?
Yeah, go to bidding PBS, and then find bid sheet, and then the top one should be, so,
Takes a minute.
that is one data.
Sorry, I'm anxious.
There we go, go to the cover sheet. And now, this has a whole bunch of information where, you know, it talks about the support tab too. Can you scroll up real quick for a moment?
I'm going. Oh, back up?
Up other direction, yes.
Your other up.
One down.
One
Oh, my
down.
One
goodness.
down, okay.
There we go, the support tab in Crew Portal, it tells you the support for the different systems, all right, not just PBS, but also if you have a rota issue, an LRD, a vacation, etc. TTS and ETB a little further down. So remember, this is here. Now, would you be so kind if you scroll down?
Back down to the chart.
Which
Yes.
one's the mouse, Linda?
That's okay. Just keep scrolling and you will find it. There's a home base rent. And here we go, home base rest buffers and waivers. So you will see if you waive your home base rest in PBS, it will go down for domestic, for example, to 9:30. So it's not going to be 8 hours. The 8 hours is going to be in actual operations. Okay?
That's a very good clarification.
That's good.
But just to answer the rest of this question, though, they're asking some good points. And so the rest of the question says, will it help me hold a 2-day and 4-day trip back-to-back within 6 calendar days? So related to those 3 waivers, will those waivers help this flight attendant hold a 2-day and a 4-day trip back-to-back within 6 calendar days?
I would say it could, right?
It could. The 30 hours, the waive 30 hours in 7 days, if those trips were amounted to more, you know, added up to more than 30 hours in 7 days, it might help you. It would help you. You wouldn't necessarily need to waive 24 hours rest and domicile in that scenario, because it's only 6 calendar days. You don't need to waive anything to get 6 in a row. Waive minimum domicile rest. If there was less than minimum domicile rest between those two trips, then by waiving it, yes, it could help you hold those two.
Could I also say this individual might consider allowing double up or multiple pairings? Right?
You could,
If
yeah.
they're really trying to get them within those days,
Yeah.
they could come in at the end of that 2-day and go right back out to start that 4-day.
Yeah, certainly, especially if a trip releases after midnight on one day,
Yeah.
and they want to pick up a trip that leaves later on that day.
You need
So-
the multiple waiver.
Multiple
So
parents, yeah.
there's different waivers
Yeah.
that you may need in order to get that. Certainly, you're trying to get the trips together, and you have to look at start and end times of those trips.
Right.
Yep. And then the last part of that question, this question was a lot to unpack. It's really like 8 questions in one. But it also, and then the last question says, also, would I add work block size minimum 6, max 6, or would it be safer to do minimum 2, maximum 6? If you do minimum 6, maximum 6, you're saying I want no less than 6 days in a row, and I want no more than 6 days in a row. So that would work for a 2-day and a 4-day back to back. If you say I want no less than min 2, max 6, if I say I want no less than 2 and no more than 6, you might get those 2 trips together, or you might not, because you're saying I want no less than 2 days in a row, but I want no more than 6. So it could actually land on either the 2-day trip by itself, or the 4-day trip by itself, because you've given it a wide latitude between 2 and 6. So if you really want those 2 trips together, you might start with 6, 6 in one layer, and then you might relax that in another layer down to 2, 6.
While we're on the bid packets, we've got another question. This one's in all caps, so they're really excited for this. Where on the bid packets are the positions listed for different sequences?
And then you'll have to go into the, actually, your basis bid. So, I'm sorry, can you bring us?
Oh, do you want me to do it? I'm sorry, I was
Yeah.
trying to not be.
No,
Let's go back one page. So let's
And
take,
just pick a base, any base.
Okay, we'll do Charlotte, because my cursor's there.
All right. So across the top, do you see where it says sequence number 308? And then keep going across from that, it says positions 1 through 8.
you want to highlight that?
Like,
Just click and drag.
oops, I'm trying.
Okay, it's fine. They see where it's at, yeah.
There we go, yay, I did it.
So that's how you're able to see which sequences.
And then if you go down then to a sequence that requires a speaker, the number of speakers will be there as well. I'm looking. Like right here, we
Yeah.
have 1 German speaker that's required on sequence
So it says
301.
can you
Yep.
circle that?
Oh, that's the-
E.
That's the origination for the Munich flight.
Uh,
So going out to London doesn't require, but when you look at the return flight.
All right. I think we have time for probably 1 or 2 more. Okay, so, in one of your examples earlier, Jeff, for Honolulu, we bid Honolulu without any positions. So that's basically bidding for all positions, right?
Yep, in numerical order. If you don't put a position preference in, the system will read default in numerical order. In the case of Honolulu, now we know, mystery solved, I wasn't sure if it was 8 or 9. Now we know it's 8 positions. But if I don't put in a position order preference, it will read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in that order.
Okay, and then our last one. In the PBS guide on the flight service website, it says under work block size, you must use this property to work more than 6 days in a row. But then under waive 24 hours rest and domicile, it says when used, the default setting of maximum work block size of 6 will be removed. No limit will exist. It says use work block size to limit your work block if
I can't.
necessary. This seems to contradict. Will utilizing waive 24 hours in domicile do the job without work block size property which restricts?
Yes. Okay, so the thing is, this is like a package to unpack, as Jeffrey said. Okay. Here is the thing. If you want to work more than 6 days in a row, but you do not want to waive your home base rest, and you do not want to waive your domicile rest, right? You can work for 12 days in a row, but at some point of time, you will need a 24-hour break. PBS will give you one. If you don't waive the 24-hour rest and domicile, it will give it to you at home, right? If you waive it, it can give it to you at a layover. Because remember, 24 is a rest, so it'll have to be there.
And the default is actually a calendar day. If you don't express any waiver, it's going to
be a calendar
be
day.
a calendar day from midnight to midnight, yeah.
And where it says you must use the property to work more than 6 days in a row, yes. Because the default, remember, PBS has a lot of defaults to prevent from assigning you, all your 75 hours worth of flying within 3 days, right? So it has defaults, and the default for working is 1 to 6 days, as Jeffrey earlier said. If you don't use any waivers, you'll be working 6 days, and you will have a calendar day of 24 hours off at home. And then you ask, will utilizing waive 24 in domicile do the job without work block size property, which restricts? Yes. Because, for example, if you, and I've seen that done, if you bid, let's say, you're at a base with an IPD, 24-hour layovers going to London out of New York. You bid 3 Londons back to back. As long as you use the waived 24-hour in domicile, PBS will recognize the 24-plus hour layover in London and would award you 3 of them back to back, or 12, whatever you prefer. Did that cover all the questions?
I think so.
Mhm.
Okay.
I lied, this is our last one, this is actually a really good question. What is the minimum time PBS will award between double-up trips? For example, what must your connection time be between trips?
Between double up?
Between double-up.
Okay, do you remember that handy-dandy little chart we just looked at? It's 30 minutes. And the handy-dandy little chart.
It's on the PBS cover page.
Oh.
Yeah.
But I don't
Thank you.
know that it was on there. It's certainly in the JCBA.
All right, that's home base list, but it should be on this chart because I did see that earlier.
Double up, right there.
You see it?
Well, the
Where?
one up there was double duty limit.
Double-up duty.
But the buffer.
I don't think the buffer's on there.
I didn't think it
not?
was either. No, I think
Okay.
it's in the
I thought I'd
JCBA.
seen- Okay.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
If you are in default, the PBS guide, remember you can search the PBS guide and, give me one moment. $30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Yep. You have double up, and double up on dates. Actually, it's allowed double up on dates. And it allows PBS to award 2 pairings that release and report on the same calendar day with a minimum of 30 minutes between release of the first pairing and report of the second pairing. Now remember, it has to be, if you're in a co-terminal base, that's not going to work. It has to be in the same airport. Is that it?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
All right, I think that's all we have time for.
Thank you guys for joining us today. I hope you learned a lot.
Yep.
Yes, thank you
Yep,
for joining us.
thank you.
We know you have very busy schedules, and we appreciate that you've taken the time to prepare and to educate yourselves to bid in PBS. Again, we do want to remind you that a recording of this town hall, as well as the PowerPoint, will be available on the APFA website a little bit later today. Something that Marty mentioned earlier, one of the most important company resources we lost in the pandemic was Fabric. Many of us grew to rely on our colleagues who work in Fabric for assistance in many areas, but most especially in PBS. Unfortunately, here at APFA, we just don't have the resources or manpower to replicate a Fabric-style resource. So we have made clear to the company that flight attendants want Fabric back. We have not been successful in our lobbying efforts, so we would encourage all of you to let the company know you would like to see the return of Fabric. We do want to mention that at some bases, some local base representatives are available for PBS help, and that varies by your base leadership. So check with your local base reps to see what services your base leaderships offer. So with that, we will say thank you and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.